Let me add my word of welcome to those of you who are on campus for maybe the first time, or our guests at Discover Dallas, those of you who are considering being students, and those of you who are considering supporting those considering being students. We're delighted that you're here. Our speaker in many ways needs no introduction, but one is due him. He is our chancellor, which means he served as president prior to my assuming that role. He is a model in the pulpit, a model in his life. He's a pastor, he's an author, he's a speaker at conferences. He is our chancellor. You know him well. What you do need to know is that Stonebriar Community Church has stepped up to be a very model church in their ministry to Dallas Seminary. Not only in working with students, not only in hosting classes at times, but in their contribution as a church to us getting behind the ministry here, but in more ways, even through their women's ministry and others where they give to our student needs for Luke's Closet and Luke's Pantry. They have stepped up as a new church in our region to be a leading church in their contribution to DTS. And that says a whole lot about the staff and the people at Stonebriar Community Church. So I wanted you to know that and how much, Chuck, we appreciate that. Would you join me in welcoming our chancellor and friend, Dr. Charles Swindoll, to our pulpit this morning?
I want to add my greeting to our president and others who have already welcomed you to the campus. I realize that you are forming your first impressions. And we never have a second chance to form first impressions. So I want to be sure that they're accurate. Something as important as finding a place to be trained for ministry certainly deserves more than surface issues or superficial observations. You need to look below the surface. You need to see beyond the day or two of your visit, and you need to understand who we are and what we're about as a school, since you're considering us as the place of training for ministry. Late the other evening, I sat down and put in my own words what I think would describe in the most general of terms what we're committed to as a school. We are committed to staying in touch with our changing times without losing our grip on God's changeless truths. That's what we're about. Since that's true, we need to look below the surface and give thought to a philosophy of ministry that you will find on this campus. I think I could boil it down to two very simple words: relevant and rooted. It was over 30 years ago I heard John R.W. Stott say it this way: it's very easy to be faithful if you do not care about being contemporary. And it's also easy to be contemporary if you do not worry about being faithful. The challenge is to be both. But the great tendency on all our parts is to gravitate to one extreme to the exclusion of the other. And we all know of ministries that have done that. You may have already begun to do that. Let's go there. Those who choose to stay rooted easily begin to resemble a relic. They are riveted to the past. I guess to use a horticultural term, they become root bound. And before too many years, they are dated and displaced. They become a little dusty like a museum. And I've observed defensive, brittle. The changing times threaten them and they're uneasy to move ahead lest they lose touch with what got us here. Then there's the other extreme. Those who choose to be relevant to the exclusion of being rooted. And they pick up an avant-garde kind of style that fits the society. It isn't long before that kind of ministry erodes into discounting the importance of our heritage, paying little attention to what got us here, and all attention to the here and now. The former tends to lack relevance, and the latter lacks depth. Before long, you're like the proverbial 3-mile wide river that's about a couple or 3 inches deep. Things move along quickly, but there's not a lot of substance. Neither extreme is what we want. Both have serious drawbacks. So our goal at the school is to stay in touch without losing touch with the truths that we embrace and that God has given us. Accepting and adapting to a computerized age is very important because that's where we find ourselves. But not everything has to become high-tech. And, if you will allow me, efficient and slick and keen. I thought of that when I came across an interesting, shall we say, commentary between Bill Gates and General Motors. It happened. At a recent computer expo, Bill Gates compared the computer industry with the auto industry and stated, if GM had kept up with technology like the computer industry has done, we would all be driving $25 cars and getting 1,000 miles to the gallon. In response, General Motors issued a press release that had a few more words. If General Motors had developed technology like Microsoft, they began, we would all be driving cars with the following 10 characteristics. 1, for no reason whatever, your car would crash twice a day. 2, every time they repainted the lines in the road, you'd have to buy a new car. 3, occasionally your car would die on the freeway for no apparent reason. You'd have to pull over to the side of the road, close all the windows, shut the car off, restart it, reopen the windows before you could continue. For some strange reason, you would simply accept this. 4, occasionally executing a maneuver such as a left turn would cause your car to shut down and refuse to restart, in which case you would simply have to reinstall the engine. 5, Macintosh would make a car powered by the sun. It would be reliable, 5 times as fast and twice as easy to drive. But it would run on only 5% of the roads. 6, the oil, water temperature, and alternator warning lights would all be replaced by a single warning light that would read, this car has performed an illegal operation. 7, the airbag system would ask, are you sure, before deploying. And 8, occasionally, for no reason whatever, your car would lock you out and refuse to let you in until you simultaneously lifted the door handle, turned the key, and grabbed hold of the radio antenna. 9, every time a new car was introduced, car buyers would have to learn how to drive all over again because none of the controls would even resemble the same manner of the old car. And 10, you'd have to press the start button to turn the engine off. Men and women, you need to understand that we are doing hazardous work here in a dangerous place. We who do our work here live in the scope of the enemy, right in the center of the crosshairs. And the enemy is not Al-Qaeda. The enemy is Lucifer, son of the morning, one day to be Lucifer of the abyss. But until then, he is a brilliant strategist who knows you better than you'll ever know yourself and has a plan for you designed to ruin your hopes and your dreams any possible way he can. And so he works on the very areas that you and I tend to ignore, overlook, or yawn through. Is it any wonder that the great apostle of grace ends his letter to the believers at Ephesus with strong words in chapter 6 and verse 10, telling them what they and we are to do? He says, "Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might." Having told us what to do, he then tells us how to do it. Put on the full armor of God. And then why? That you may be able to stand against tas methodias tu diabolou. Tas methodias, the methods, the strategies of the slanderer. The strategies. I quote, "In these strategies, the devil is crafty in that he does not always attack through head-on assaults, but employs cunning and wily stratagems designed to catch believers unawares." So writes our own Harold W. Honer in his tome on Ephesians, page 824. When you buy the commentary, you get a wheelbarrow with it. I've waited all my ministry to read what Harold had to say about Ephesians, and now I know. How crafty, how sneaky, how clever, how deceptive, how bright is the enemy, who loves the fact that you're thinking about ministry. That means you move directly into the scope. That means you may someday fill one of these seats. And you may someday get to know him like you've never known him before. Ever put yourself in his shoes? Ever thought about what you would do if you were the devil? What strategy you would carry out? One very creative thinker did that. And he put it in these words: "If I were the devil, I would gain control of the most powerful nation in the world. I would delude their minds into thinking they had come from man's effort instead of God's blessing. I would promote an attitude of loving things and using people instead of the other way around. I would dupe entire states into relying on gambling for their state revenue. I would convince people that character is not an issue when it comes to leadership. I would make it legal to take the life of unborn babies. I would make it socially acceptable to take one's own life and then invent machines to make it convenient. I would cheapen human life as much as possible so that the life of animals is valued more than that of human beings. I would take God out of the schools, where even the mention of his name was grounds for a lawsuit. I'd come up with drugs that sedate the mind. And then I'd target the young, and I'd get sports heroes to advertise them. I'd get control of the media so that every night I could pollute the mind of every family member for my agenda. I would attack the family. the backbone of any nation. I'd make divorce acceptable and easy, even fashionable. I would compel people to express their most depraved fantasies on canvas and movie screens, and then I would call it art. I'd convince the people that right and wrong are determined by a chosen few who call themselves authorities and refer to their agenda as politically correct. I'd persuade people that the church is irrelevant and out of date, and the Bible is for the naive. I'd dull the minds of Christians especially and make them believe that prayer isn't all that important and that faithfulness and obedience are optional. Come to think of it, I guess I'd leave things pretty much the way they are. Talk about the need to minister with relevance and the importance of staying rooted. Talk about the all-important necessity of balance. To borrow from Martin Luther from the 16th century, here we stand. We can do no other. Travel back with me 1945 years. We'll be at 58, AD 58. There's a tired, itinerant preacher, evangelist, apostle, spending a little over 18 months in the fast-moving Grecian city of Corinth, who is led by the Spirit of God to write his magnum opus. And by the time he gets to the climax of the book, having established a doctrinal basis for true, authentic Christianity, it's almost as though he gets down on his knees and begins to plead. As he writes in Romans chapter 12, I beg of you, I plead with you, please, I beseech you, and then he addresses the value of a wholesale commitment, consecration, following it with the way to get there, and that's by means of a transformation. I plead with you, I urge you, brothers and sisters, of whatever generation, first to the 21st, that you present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. Your lips move when I read Romans 12:1. Most of you know it by heart. If you don't, you should. You will. I see three problems with this wholesale consecration. The first is a practical one. The next is a cultural one. The third is a spiritual one. The practical one is that he's telling living people to sacrifice their bodies. This was in the days of animal sacrifices, where the carcass never had a choice. He's dead. Anything from the animal kingdom that wound up on an altar wound up dead before getting there. But we're living. As a good friend of mine often reminds me, the problem with living sacrifices is we tend to want to crawl off the altar, especially when the heat builds. And then there's a cultural problem. We're told to do a holy thing in an unholy world, which leads to the spiritual problem. this kind of sacrifice is before God logical and reasonable, and it is rational, and it is right. In the eyes of our world, it is all the opposite. Illogical and unreasonable and irrational and silly. Who on earth is going to set aside his life, body, beginning with the body, including soul and spirit, to one he's never met, never seen? But here it is. And it's like for every day. I like the way Eugene Peterson paraphrases it. Take your everyday, ordinary life. You're sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you could do for God. That's consecration. Have you done that today? Before you got dressed, drove yourself to the campus? Lord, today I place myself at your disposal. I give you my eyes, I give you my ears, I give you my mouth, my words. I give you my body. I give you my feet, my hands, my thoughts, my motives. I give you my actions. I place before you whatever it is that represents me before you. It's yours. It's yours. Whatever, it's yours. The enemy hates that. He doesn't like hearing that. And we can't do that on our own, as much as I would try to throw the right switches or push the right buttons inside of you and say, here, now, you're equipped. You're going to do it. It'll happen. It's addressed to us because we're the ones engaged in it. That's why he's pleading. It takes a transformation. This is no surface alteration. This is no cosmetic change in verse 2. This is the no-nonsense, bone-deep, gut-level transformation. It's from the inside out. And he immediately addresses a major battleground, and that's the age in which we live. Our times. They're so comfortable. They're so appealing. And the great majority walks in lockstep with it. And he says to us, don't be conformed to it. But the contrary is to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We care a lot about the mind at Dallas Seminary. We care a lot about what you think and what prompts you to think like that. We care, therefore, about words. They're the building blocks of thoughts. We care that you understand words, the meanings of them. That's all part of staying rooted in the changeless truths as we talk in terms of a world that's lost its way. The renewing of your mind. Cynthia and I sat down, years ago, and hammered out what we would call for us a set of core values. They found their way into our radio ministry, Insight for Living, and they have found their way into our church, where we have the privilege of serving. I pass them along to you. I'm happy if you choose to take them, add to them, change them, push them around. Just so you cultivate mind-renewing core values as well. In no particular order, there are 6 of them. The first is character in ourselves. We believe it starts there. A leader without character is an accident getting ready to happen. And not only are you going to create havoc, those around you will be impacted. And as you're leading whoever or whatever, those in your leadership will crash and burn. They'll be sucking air and living on husks. If you don't have character in yourself, start there. I brought with me, and I won't take the time to read, but it's a whole litany of the heartbreaking record of what happened at the lives of so many of the CEOs who got greedy and got the profit from the stock as they ripped off people who worked in back rooms, in rooms without windows, and trusting those who led them lack of character. It's not rocket science. They took the money and ran. You'll do that with glory if you don't have character. You take the credit and run. Second, honor to others. We believe that when we are around other people, we are to treat them with respect. We believe that at the seminary. You're not a number. You're not a unit that pays tuition. You're a human being with a name and with a set of needs. You're an individual who will someday touch lives we will never touch. So we won't rip you off here. We won't take unfair advantage of you. We won't pull rank on you because we have knowledge you may not have. We won't twist the text to fit what we want it to say. So you'll get in line with us. We are all under the same authority. And therefore we treat you with honor. When we say we love you, we mean we love you. Chuck Colson tells a terrific story of the time when he and Patty, his wife, were visiting the beautiful hills of Northern Ireland, which for years, he writes, has been open warfare between Protestants and Catholics. He says, while Patty and I were there, a bishop in the Anglican church took a ride on a Sunday afternoon down one of the rock-walled country roads. As he was coming around a bend, he was thinking about his sermon that morning. He wasn't paying attention to his driving. Coming around the other bend, the other way was another car, and the two of them collided right in the middle of the road. Out of the other car stumbled a Catholic priest. The Anglican bishop ran up to the priest and said, "Father, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was my fault." And the priest said, "No, it was entirely my fault. I wasn't looking where I was going." Two men stood in the middle of the road, holding one another up. Finally, the priest said to the bishop, "You look a little shaken. I think I have something you need." He walked back and opened up the glove compartment, took out a pint of Irish whiskey and brought it to the bishop and said, "Here, take a swig. It'll steady your nerves." Bishop looked around. No one was there. Colson adds, he's an Anglican, not a Baptist. And so he took a big swig, and then he handed it back to the priest and said, "Thank you, Father. Thank you. This has really settled my nerves. That's just what I needed. Isn't this wonderful? What an act of Christian love." Protestant Catholics are fighting over in Belfast, and here you share your whiskey with me. Thank you. Won't you have a drink with me? The priest looked at him and said, "No, thank you. I think I'll wait till after the police have come." I was almost tempted to say, when we share our whiskey, we won't mean anything else but that. Character in ourselves, honor to others, grace in our relationships. You'll never be given my list to live up to. If God gives a list, we all go after that one. This is not a legalistic school. Never has been, never will be. It's a school founded on grace. We're saved by it. We live by it. Doesn't mean we don't have rules. Every school has to have some. It means, however, we understand there are a lot of differences. We represent a number of denominations. We We also know that there's a donor base that's broad-based, representing a number of different convictions. We don't tighten up rules and hold them so strictly and unbendingly that there isn't room for forgiveness and generosity and kindness, encouragement, and downright fun. One of the greatest memories I have of campus life was the laughter in the walls, the singing in the classroom before we began our study, the joy of gathering around the text together, the sharing of the load of each other's lives. It isn't perfect here. After all, we made it, and we're thinking of you. And you can make it. So we all need the grace. You'll need to give the profs grace, and they'll give you grace. Comes from a hurting student. You heard that. Number 4, excellence in all our pursuits. I'm so weary of the Bible church in the neighborhood being the ugly duckling, I could scream. Where is the excellence? Excellence in what we print. Excellence in how we preach. Excellence in our counseling. Excellence in our touch. Dallas Seminary is committed to excellence. Excellence. Not perfection. There's a great difference. One leads to neurosis. The other lifts the bar and reminds people that our great God deserves our best. As one entertainer said, God don't make no junk. And she's right. Excellence. We should set the standard for the world, not look to them to set the standard for us. One of my mentors was Ray Stedman. He used to say over and over, if the church were doing what it's called to do, it would become so magnetic the world couldn't keep its curiosity. Would have to find out what's going on in there. Excellence in our pursuit. 5th, not necessarily 5th, glory to our God. If credit goes anywhere, it goes to Him. If King Uzziah teaches us nothing else, it teaches us you don't steal the glory that belongs to God. The king who was so great and died a leper because he attempted to take the glory that was God's. 6th, and please never forget it, accountability to one another. Character in ourselves, honor to others. Grace in our relationships, excellence in our pursuit, glory to God, accountability to one another. Willing to be asked the hard questions, coming back in a non-defensive manner, opening one's life, being vulnerable. Because ultimately we will answer to our Lord. It only makes good sense that I have a small circle of same-gender individuals with whom I meet personally on a regular basis and unfold my life as they do theirs. We believe in that at Dallas Seminary. We don't believe you're an island. We don't believe you do your best work all alone. We like working together. There is nothing more contemporary and nothing more faithful than being Christ's representative in this dangerous world. A man you will come to love and study under as you enroll and become a part of the family of Dallas Seminary is Dr. Howie Hendricks. He tells a terrific story. I've heard him tell it, and I'm glad to see that he put it in his book. He says, I was flying out of Boston recently. The crew boarded the passengers and then got word that we'd have to get off because there was a, quote, slight mechanical problem. So we all got off and sitting around the waiting room, we heard the announcement, in 15 minutes you'll receive further information. You know how you could tell experienced travelers from amateurs? They believe the public announcements. It was 6 hours before that plane finally took off for Dallas. The passengers were angry and impatient, as always happens. Free drinks were freely offered. Well, there was a guy sitting across the aisle from me, hotter than a hornet, and every time a flight attendant walked down the aisle, he would give her a portion of his mind he very obviously couldn't afford to lose. I thought to myself, that poor lady. So after a while, I walked back to the galley on the plane, and I talked to her. I said, you know, I'm a frequent flyer, and I'm always looking for somebody doing a good job. American Airlines should be proud to have you on the team. I cannot believe how nicely you've handled the obnoxious character sitting across from me. She smiled and said, thanks very much. Then I said, could I have your name? I would like to write the company and tell them how much I appreciate you and your work for American Airlines. Oh, really? No, that wouldn't be necessary. You see, I don't really work for American Airlines. You don't? No, she said, I represent the Lord Jesus Christ. That's why I do what I do. Hendrick says, so I picked myself up off the floor, and we had a delightful conversation. I hope when you're engaged in ministry 20, 30 years from now, you'll still be working for the Lord Jesus. And I hope you will be as relevant as this morning's paper. And you will be as rooted as the changeless Word of God. And if you are both, you will have a ministry for as long as you live. Let's pray. Words of life, words of hope. Give us strength. Help us cope. In this world, wherever we roam, ancient words will guide us home. Ancient words ever true, changing me, changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. So wrote Michael W. Smith. Thank you, Father, for the ancient words. Thank you for timeless truths. Thank you for a place that's believed them for almost 80 years. And for almost 11,000 people across the continents who once sat where we're sitting. We extol your name. We thank you for Dallas Seminary. And we praise you for Jesus Christ, our Lord, in whose name we pray. And everybody said,